we have completed our data tab, and next we have the data validation with us. So in that data validation, basically what we are doing, we are validating the data. So we have entered the data and then we are testing that everything is correct or not. So how we can do that? In the same, we have this data validation thing. So let's understand this. We can access it by data tools, and then data validation. Options are, we can have the data validation. This you can see here, circle invalid data and clear validation circles. So let's try that first. Understanding data validation, we have some settings as well. So I will be going back to my Excel sheet. So let me open a large database so that we should understand this carefully and then see what we can do. I will go back to the Excel, that sample employee data, and there we are providing some data validation rules. So we are testing our data here. Let me delete this sheet and I'm at this data. So I have some record here, first name, last name, and all these columns are here. So I am going to data and data tools. In that data tools, you can hover your mouse and see this data validation. So if you read the description given by the Microsoft Excel, it is saying that pick from a list of rules to limit the type of data that can be entered in a cell. Let me click here. So now in the settings, first we have this data validation. So if you can see here, I have some options here that those three options are data validation, circle invalid data, and clear validation circles. So I'll click on data validation first, and I have the settings, I have the input message, I have the error alert with me. So validation criteria, what you are keeping here. So I have the cursor here somewhere in this column A. So let me choose the entire column here. So I will be going back and choosing the entire column, and this entire column is having a name. Or let me do the testing on a smaller data set, and I am opening the orders one again so that we can understand it first. So I'm selecting here this customer ID now, this entire column, and going to my data and this option to data validation. In that setting, now what value should be allowed? Validation criteria you need to set. Right now it is any value. Let me have it like it should be having a value, a whole number. It should be having a decimal value. It should be having a list. It should be having a date. It should be having a time, or it should be having a text length. Or otherwise, I can customize it to the custom my rules as well. So let me do it for that. It should be having only a decimal value, and that value should be, or maybe what we can do, we can set it to a length as well, or we can try with the whole number as well. I'm giving with a whole number, and that value should be, minimum should be 2 and the maximum should be 4. So this is my range here for the validation criteria. And in the input message, so if somebody is putting a wrong input, then what should be the output? We need to set it here, and specifically you need to tell your customer as well that it should be, if having the value, it should the minimum from 2 to 3 4. So these are all the allowed values here. So in that validation, what we are doing right now, we are choosing one column and then providing, then doing data validation on this column. So validation criteria is that it should be a whole number. Between the data, we can choose not between, equal to, not equal to, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. So right now I'm doing the between. In that between, I am providing two things, that is minimum value should be 2 and the maximum value should be 4. In the input message, what should be the input message? So I'm giving here as, I'll write here important. So you can provide any description here. This depends on you. So I will be writing provide correct customer ID. So this is my input message here. And then in error alert. So if somebody is having a input and the wrong input it is providing, what should be the output in that case? So show error alert after invalid data is entered. Yes, when user enters invalid data, show this error alert. So this is stop, title, and error message. So this time I am giving message as, let me give it error. So I'll write here something, wrong data entered. So this is my error message, and I'll click on OK. So data validation is already set. Now you can see here, you are having a message with you. This is the input message provided, and that message is important, provide correct customer ID. Okay. Even if I click on any column, I'll get this message. So it is telling me what should be the output here, what should be the input. So the message is given. This is the title which we provided. If you see it again, I'll click on the data validation part. So you can see here, I'll click on input message. So this was the title given by you. This was the input message. And this similarly we can see here. Now let's try something. I will be writing here now 5 wrong data enter. So it is not allowing me to enter 5 because the input, the setting what I have done, the validation rules are sets to value from minimum value is 2 to 4. So if I retry it, let me try this time 2, good to go. I'll try 3, good to go. 4, good to go. 5, I'm not allowed to enter. So this is the data validation. By using data validation, you can actually stop the user to enter the wrong values. Now users are restricted to have the only the corrected values with you. Now if I go to data validation again, so this is data validation. Now, what if I already have the data and then I need to check whether it is having the output in the correct form or not. So before that, let's see what other options are available with us. So we can check here for a whole number. We can check it here for a decimal value. We can check for a list. We can check for a date, time, text length as well. So we can set the text length like I should have a word of or a sentence of 20 length. I should have it for 100 length, that I can set that also. Otherwise you have a customized option as well. In that customized option, you're okay to provide a formula here, and then you can, according to that formula, you can have those values here. So you can use a formula like unique, so all the values should be unique here, you cannot re-enter it again. So this all can be provided here in that input message. So same, it will work as title and the input message. In the error alert, you have the option as a style. So you can have it as a warning, you can have it as a information. So it will be, so if I change it to the information for now, I'll click on OK. So if I enter 5 now, so it is giving me only information. It is not stopping me because wrong data entered again. And I'll change the values again. This was set for an entire column. This need to be set for entire column. So let me change it to the data validation. It is having a more than value. So let me delete that. Let me clear all and click on OK. Now I'm not having any data validation. I'll click on this again, data validation. And in that data validation, I'll go to the whole number again. Minimum value I'm providing 2 to 4 and maximum value is 4. Input message, let me write IMP here, and for brief thing I'm writing here correct, and in the error alert I'm giving only information I'm passing this time. This I'll write here wrong maybe, and again in the error message also I'm writing wrong, and I'll click on OK. And now you can see the output here. So if I write here 5 wrong, so this is like information. Before that we have used what we have used, the different style. The style was stop. Similarly we can use with the warning as well. Now you can see some green symbols here. Let me close this. So this 5 was already provided. Let me, so this is a data validation error. So you can see here, this is a data validation error because I have already have this data in my sheet. So it could not stop it before, and after that, after having that value, I have put on the data validation. So if it is having a wrong input, then it is giving me error like this. So I can change these values as well. The other option is that now with the data validation, let me go back to my slide. So data validation we understood. Then we have circle invalid data. In that invalid data, now if I already have this data with me, so let me delete this thing first. So I am deleting this data validation rule, data. I am clearing this validation thing here, and then I am writing here 5 here. So I'll enter 555. So this is my customer ID here. And now I'm going to a message here that is circle invalid data. So before doing this circle invalid data, what I need to do, let me select a column here, and then I'm clicking on data validation, and I'm providing here some settings here. Let me make it whole number between 2 to 4. So this is my range here. I'm not testing anything here. So this is showing me some green things. Otherwise, what I can do, let me circle the invalid data. So I'll do the circle the invalid data. Now you can see here that you are actually checked for a value here. In fact, it is doing for the heading as well. So instead of passing it to the column headings, you can start it from the values, and then it can actually circle the wrong values. Now it is easy for the user to see the all the wrong values, and user can actually work on those values. So now I can make it changes as 4. Similarly, I can change it to 2 as well. I can change it to 3 as well. So if I try to write maybe 5, it is giving me some error. This value does not match the data validation restriction defined for this cell. So in the future, I cannot enter a wrong input, but if it is having with the previous data, that we can do with the data validation. So we have two options available. If you are having the data validation rule in the beginning only, then user can't enter the wrong type of data. If you already have the data, you can identify it with the data validation. So let me delete this once again. I'm clearing all the rules here. Clear all. Click on OK. I am passing these values again to data validation. So data validation is again whole number between minimum is 2 and maximum is 4. I'll click on OK, and if I enter something 5, it is giving me a wrong output. Let me delete this again. I'm deleting this data validation. So I will be coming to data validation, yes, and clear all. Click on OK. Now again I'm changing it to 5, 5, and then again applying data validation on this. Data validation, whole number, keeping it between the value minimum 2 and maximum 4. Clicking on OK. I have some wrong inputs here. I'll click on circle invalid data. So once I have clicked that, so I can have these circles here. And then if I need to delete this circle, I can click on clear validation circle. So once I click that, this is done. So let me go back to my large data set. This is my sample employee data. So let me test something here. Let me see, do I have the repeated names with me? So I click on first name and this data validation, and let me take the value as maybe custom. In that custom, I'm using formula unique. I'm using the formula unique here and click on OK. Let me click on circle invalid data. Your worksheet contains more than 255 invalid cells. Only the first 255 cells will be marked. OK. So you can see here. So these names are repeated here. So that is why it has been marked here. So it should be having the unique values. Let me try this clear validation circles here and go to some other text validation now. I'm going back to the text validation. Instead of customized value, let me test it for the text length. That length should be, minimum should be maybe 5 and the maximum should be 8. It should be having more errors now. I'll click on OK and let me circle the values here, circle invalid data. So again I'm getting a, because I'm having a good number of record, this is somewhere about 2000. Your worksheet contains more than 255 invalid cells. Only the first 255 cells will be marked. So this is giving me result like this. So data validation, that is we have said accordingly I'm getting the circles here. So in this way, you can work on your data set. There's, yes, these things we need to be corrected here. And if you want to clear it, you can clear the validation circles here. Similarly, you can set the input message, error message, and error alert. So what we have with the data validation, we have the three options. We can choose a particular column here or a column cell, or you want to have for entire sheet, you can do it. So you can choose any value, whole number, decimal, list. By default, it is set to any value. List, decimal, date, time, text length, and you can customize it also. Then you can choose the range here. You can provide the input message as title and the description. And the error alerts, you have three options for the style. stop warning and the information. You can clear it by clearing it all. Once you have set the data validation, you can circle the data validation, and with the third option you can actually clear the data validation circles. In the last, we have removing the duplicate rows, and this is an interesting one. You can actually delete the duplicate rows from your worksheet. How you can do that? I'm coming back to my simple employee data. So like I can have a duplicate record with me. So let me select this, the complete data set, and let me hover my mouse to this data tools. In here, I can see here remove duplicates. Delete duplicate rows from a sheet. You can pick which column should be checked. So right now I'm selecting everything. Let's see whether it will work or not. I'll click on that. It is asking me to select the column. So let me select everything here, or let me go for any one column. I'll try first with all the columns, and 1499 duplicate values found and removed, 502 unique values remain. So if I click on this, okay. So I will be left with my 500 records and other values are deleted. You can see here in the count now I have this total 502. I'll make it undo so that I have everything back with my data. Similarly, I can go with what particular column as well. I can choose that as well. So with this remove duplicates warning, I can do the expand the selection as well. So this is the option available where I can have only the unique data set in my Microsoft Excel sheet. You can delete all the duplicate rows here. So what we have covered so far in this week, we learned how we can work on large data sets. So first we learned about how we can freeze the panes, how we can freeze the pane for the first row, first column, or we can choose the multiple rows and the multiple columns. We then worked on how we can make the groups into Microsoft Excel like pivot table. We can ungroup it also, and for each group we can have the subtotal as well in Microsoft Excel. So whenever we are working with a large data set, then we have the requirement to make our data into the groups, and according to that group we can make the expansion and the selection. After that, we learned about various methods of protecting file, how we can protect a worksheet, how we can protect the structure of a workbook, and then we learned about how we can give a password to a Microsoft Excel sheet or workbook file, and we can encrypt it with password, and whenever we need to delete that password we can keep it blank. Then we learned about how we can sort the data at various level. We learned about the custom sorting as well. We can do that custom sorting. We can have the sorting with multiple levels. By adding the levels, we can copy the level, we can delete the level. We can have the data in the form of ascending and the descending. We can do the sorting based on the font color as well as on the based on the cell color as well as on cell value. Then we learnt about modeling what if analysis to get the target results. We learnt about the scenario manager with having the values in the scenario summary. We learnt about the name boxes as well. Then we learnt about the goal seek, where we need to provide a target value and accordingly we can have the input value. We learnt about the data tab as well, with where we can provide a range, and according to that range of input we can have different outputs set with us, and accordingly we can forecast our analysis. Then we learnt about how we can add the data validations to the cells or to a column. We can provide a set of rules and for our data entry. So if you already have the data with you, then from that data validation you can actually circle out the invalid data, and if you don't have the data, in that case you can restrict user to enter only the valid data. This is all about this week. Thank you.